We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use the box at sign up for 10 points. And here we go.
Welcome everybody. Friday night, me and Noah are here as always. Glad to be joined by Noah. We do have a special guest I'm going to bring on momentarily here. Noah, we saw Monday night, Alabama did defeat Ohio State pretty handedly. And with that, it did, pretty much end our college football season. Yes, we have recruitment coming. We have, spring ball coming, but, we decided to shift some gears and talk some NHL tonight, Noah, since there really isn't a whole lot of college football to go over.
Yeah, man, unfortunately the college season is over. First of all, want to say I'm very grateful we got to have a season like that. Even though it wasn't really the same, obviously, with no fans and stuff like that. But I'm still glad that we got to have a mostly full season. Alabama, what can you say about them and how great they are, just continuously reloading their rosters after half their team leaves for a draft class. But, yeah, I'm excited to talk some NHL because, in my opinion, most underrated sport on the planet needs way more attention in this great country known as the USA. And I'm really excited to talk some hockey tonight.
Yeah, most definitely.
I got that on for you tonight.
Sport that, moving forward, me and Noah are definitely going to talk a lot about and bring some light to it. But with that said, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. Me and Noah would like to welcome actually our first guest on the show, if you guys didn't know. So we're really excited. Our good friend Brian, we're bringing him on to talk some hockey tonight. Go ahead and add him now. How are you, Brian?
Guys, how are you?
Good. So
really good.
Let's jump right into this, guys. To me, at least, it seems like a very short offseason. It could be longer than it seemed, but to me, very short. And we do have hockey back finally, kicking off just the other night. And at least for me, I'm really excited. Title defense, hopefully for my Tampa Bay Lightning, looking, it's early. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But so far through, 1.5 games is looking like they didn't skip a beat at all.
Well, you know what it is? It's such a deep, talented team. And that's the advantage they have over most teams is they've been able to, in the draft, in those second and third rounds, find those players that make your roster. Again, Kucherov's not there this year. That was a second-round pick. Braden Point is a third-round pick. Braden Point's one of the most underrated players in the entire league. So they can come at you in waves. And the best defenseman in the league, Victor Hedman, I think he keeps that mantle. Vasilevsky, the phenomenal goaltender, but the crazy part is I don't think that's why they win. Like, I don't think that he's very good, but if you look around the league, goaltending is important, but it's really not the way that it used to be. It's kind of, in some cases, going the way of the running back in the NFL, where you can keep your cap number down, keep kind of, bringing him in. Again, when Garth, your Lightning won the Stanley Cup, they went up against a team with a journeyman goaltender there in Hudobin. So, that it's indicative of where the league is headed. And, I find myself looking at that, and Tampa, I think, was one of the teams that really benefited from the divisional realignment, because they went into division that I think is the weakest of the bunch, and they're going to just feast on these teams, I feel.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm really excited about is the fact that Stamkos is back and looking, as close to 100% as possible. Like you mentioned there, Brian, Cooch is out potentially for the entire season. We don't really know yet. We'll know as we get down the line. But, I'm just really glad that we do have Stamkos back at least, to try and make up for the presence that Cooch has in terms of scoring and facilitating offense.
Yeah, and Garth, when I look at your team, and obviously I'm no Lightning fan, but I did watch a good amount of this playoff run, and you guys had games where guys like Kucherov or Braden Point would miss the game due to injury, and you guys were still able to grind out these results because your team just has such great depth. And obviously Steve Yzerman was there for a long time. He's a great GM. He did a really good part in building this roster. But since he's left and Julian Brisebois took over, I think he's done a great job as well. And I'm just looking at this offseason. You guys have guys like Kevin Shattenkirk leave, Zach Goshen leave, and then you guys just turn right around. You get guys like Luke Shin back, Patrick Maroon. You signed Sergachev to a bridge deal. These are key players to your roster, and they're not guys that are going to show up as these superstars like a Stamkos or a Kucherov, but these are the guys that I saw in the playoffs who are, busting their ass to get to the corner, fight for the puck in these puck battles. These are things that matter in these deep playoff runs. And, I think that's just a testament to what your management has done.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend, too much time on the Lightning, but I do want to touch on one last thing. But, I want to get to your guys' team and around the league as well. But, what I've seen, and like I said, we've only had 1.5 games so far, so it's not, anything to predict the whole season and see for the rest of the season. But one thing that stood out to me, in that Stanley Cup run is a presence that we brought on defense. We had that chippiness to us where we're going out there and laying some big hits on guys and, forcing turnovers and being a lot more aggressive instead of, just this team that could, put up a lot of points, but, lacked a little bit in terms of defense and floor checking. But, we seem to be right back off that good row line, really looking good so far. Look like they didn't skip a beat at all. So, I'm really hoping that we see that from them again this season.
Yeah, and I think that that Barker Goodrow trade, I think they gave up a first rounder in that. They're not going to care if he keeps putting in that effort and they keep getting these deep playoff runs. And I think the Lightning have always had great players. Guys like Stamkos, Kucherov, they have been there a long time. Braden Point, I think he was drafted in something like 2015, 16. They've had this core, but in my opinion, what those teams have lacked is that bit of a physical edge. When a team would grind them down a bit, I think they kind of faltered when you saw them in that Columbus series where they just got beat down pretty much. But that's no longer a problem this year. They have these guys that can fight back. And, when I was watching some of their playoff games, I was really impressed because, someone would hit them in the mouth and they'd not only hit back, they'd hit harder. And, I think that's what you need to be successful. So big credit to you guys for that. And obviously, long way to go, but we'll see how that title defense goes.
Yeah, and, obviously it's never easy, but hopefully we can get it done.
They just overwhelm teams with talent. I mean, obviously one of the top, very few talented teams in the league, top to bottom. And, when you can roll that kind of elite talent, it makes it look. You bring in a Steven Stamkos who missed most of last year, which fills in right for Kucherov. I mean, the ball just keeps rolling. I mean, no other team can really do that. They won a Stanley Cup without their captain and the number one center. It's like, that's how deep they are. Now the salary cap's going to be an issue eventually, but that day is not today. So you kind of just got to roll with it for now.
Yeah, and one guy that Noah mentions a lot there is Point. Eventually, we will, going to have to re-sign him. And obviously, but I don't look forward to that because that guy's going to be due some, big time money.
He's just so good, man. When I was watching these playoffs, there were so many great players. I was looking at Victor Hedman, but Braden Point, man, for being so young and you guys have him on the absolute steal of a contract, I told you several times, just enjoy it while it lasts. Because when you have to pay him, you're going to have to get rid of a lot of good players to keep him, and he is worth it. So,
yeah, and with that said, I don't want to spend all night on just my team, like I said. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this comment up from John and pivot over to Brian's favorite team, the Ranger. What are some of your expectations out of them this year, Brian? What are you looking to see in terms of, is this a win now or more so, just further building for the future?
I don't think they're in win now at all. They're in the toughest division after the realignment. I mean, if you look around the four that are there, I don't think you'll find a better 1 through 6 than you will in what they're calling the East Division. I did not feel they were a playoff team into the year, partly because I think the teams ahead of them are just better than they are. And when you have to keep playing the same teams over and over again, you don't get that, California road trip out to go play those, bottom feeders in Southern California. You don't get that Western Canadian trip. You don't get that. The team doesn't see you all the time. That's the way the season is structured this year. It really does lend itself to excellent teams in divisions where they can actually simply just do their scouting and they know what's coming. And it really will can beat skill. As far as the game the other night, I mean, it wasn't really anything I didn't expect. I mean, these guys have not played in forever. There was no preseason. You're bringing in 19, 20-year-old kids, up here in big spots. I mean, Keandre Miller was on the number 1 defensive pairing last night. So kid's 20 years old. He's playing his first NHL game. I mean, it's like you can't expect them to just go. I mean, as far as looking slow, I don't necessarily think that was the issue. The Islanders are a very good defensive team. I don't think they're a very good offensive team. I think if you give them chances to their elite player in Matt Barzal, they will make you pay for it. But when they can get a lead, they're going to clamp down. I mean, they're going to play their defensive system. And it's very hard for a team to get through that, especially early on in the year. So I'm not going to sit here and overreact about one loss. I also have no expectations this year. All I'm looking for is young players to continue to develop and improve so that when this team is in their window, they're ready and they're there. There wasn't anything that was overly concerning to me last night, short of the fact that they would just look very sloppy in the first period. It wasn't a speed issue. They just it looked like they hadn't played in a long time, and that's what it looked like to me. So I don't have a lot of concern there. I think, again, Igor will be fine. The defense will not be fine this year. They're going to have to patchwork that and try to get through until more of their kids come in and they're able to get to the 6 that they want. And the forwards are in top 9 is not an issue. Second line center might be an issue, but for the most part, that's not really going to be a problem for them. And they're a deadly power play once they finally get it going. I'm not overly concerned about it. The Islanders are a good defensive team, so that doesn't surprise me how last night kind of went.
Yeah, and I think when I look at this, Brian, I think, people might be overreacting a little bit because, like you said, this isn't your old Islanders team. This is the Islanders team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I saw them play the Flyers in one of the best series I've ever played. They just straight beat them down physically. The Flyers are a very talented team, but what I saw was a team that's very hardworking. They're very good at fundamentals. I don't see him ever make mistakes. I think Barry Trotz, he is a Stanley Cup winning coach. He preaches, hard checking defense, don't make the mistake, use the boards for your outlet passes. Just don't make any mistakes. So, I'm not surprised that the Rangers lost them. I think the Islanders are a very good defensive team, like you said. But, you mentioned the top line guys like Artemi Panarin, Zibanejad. They're obviously in the way, but you also mentioned young talent. And, of course, I got to ask you about this guy that you've just been raving about for so long. Mm-hmm. What did you think of Alexi Lafreniere in his first game? I'm just looking at his stats right now. 13-21 time on ice, 1 shot. He had 2 penalty minutes, -1. What did you see from him in his first game?
Well, the early penalties in the game just changed the whole flow of the rest of it. That's why if you look at some of the time on ice, guys like Capo Caco didn't really get much time when, total parking cones like Jack Johnson ended up getting a lot of time because you're just defending the whole game because you're consistently in the penalty box. So I don't really look at too much. I mean, it is the weirdest situation, I think, for a number 1 pick to ever make it into the league. You didn't have your draft. You finally make it to a team. There's nobody in the stands to watch you. It's like the most bizarre situation. And I don't, the expectations were for him to have like a 60-point equivalent year this year. I think that's just, look, kid's uber talented. It will take time to get into the NHL way of things. But he's got an NHL body. He's got NHL skill. It's a matter of just getting it to translate. He was playing at least in the game 1 on their third line with Filipino as the center and Julian Gauthier, who was the guy they picked up from Carolina last year. Practice today, they had him up in the second line, I think, playing with Stroman and Panarin. So we'll see where that goes there. But I just the problem, though, I think, is that people equate the NFL draft to everything else. Most times, kids in the first round, unless very, very few, get into the league the first year they're eligible. They either go back to juniors, they get some seasoning time. Really last year, like 2 or 3, I think it was 3 players, maybe 4, got legitimate time in the league from the first round last year. And this year, you look at even Quentin Byfield, who I thought was a phenomenal player, who I would have been very, very happy with had Lafreniere not been there, went back to the AHL because these guys take time and you can't just drop them into your lineup. So it's going to be a learning experience. It's going to be a transition for him, but I think he has every ability to do it. So I don't worry about that, which is why, to kind of circle back to the initial point, I have no expectations this year. Whatever they do, they're going to do. I just want to see some growth from the younger players. Whether they win or whether they lose, it doesn't really, come into play.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, the NHL draft is a lot different, and I think the fact the NFL doesn't have a minor league system. Once you're drafted, you gotta make what you can get there. But obviously, you have the CHL, the AHL, stuff like that, the ECHL. Unless you're a guy who's I'd say top 3, definitely top 5 conservative, you're not going to break into the lineup right away. And even if you do, these guys, they don't just, unless the team is really bad and you're like Sidney Crosby, you're going to start on the third line or the second line. You're not going to get a lot of ice time. So, he's not going to get, 5 or 18 minutes a night to start, but, he's a very promising player. Obviously, I think his for someone so young, he is very intelligent. And he always makes the right play from what I see. So I got to ask you, what would you say is a fair expectation for him in his rookie season? And what would you think would be an overachieving season for the Rangers?
I think if the Rangers sneak into the playoffs, that would be an overachievement, specifically in this division. I mean, again, like I said, you're going up against Boston and Washington and Philadelphia. Pittsburgh's off to a bit of a rough start, but they're still the Penguins. The Islanders are still there. I think the Rangers are about the 6th team in the division, in my opinion. I think they're better than the Buffalo and New Jersey, but that's not exactly an accomplishment, so I'm not going to write home about that. For Lafreniere, I think it's just getting his legs under him. Again, if he's playing third line minutes, I thought the 60-point equivalent was going to be hard for him to get to, especially on a team with this much talent up front. And to your point, he's not ending up on a team like the Kings, like the Senators, like, a team that has nobody around him where he's the focal point. He can kind of just blend in. He can kind of hide behind the Panarins and the Zibanejads and the Kreiders, and he can just take care of himself and just get better, not worry about that spotlight so much, even though it's New York. So listen, I mean, I just think, like Kakko, for example, last year is not a really fair equivalent because he was playing bottom 6 minutes, sometime on the 4th line. His first year in North America, it was for his development, that was the best spot for him, for sure, because you're playing the pro game and not playing against, lesser competition. So you take your lumps and you learn more quickly. For Lafreniere, he's used to it. He's been in North America his entire life. So, it's hard to use numbers because it's such a weird 56 game schedule versus we always give references to like an 82 game year. Like, oh, he's going to play 40 goals. Like, what that means. I think if he ends up in the high teens, low 20s, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. He has the ability to do so. It's just a matter of, can he get comfortable? And again, you are continually playing the same teams over and over again. Familiarity breeds contempt. He is not shy with the body. He is not a player who will shy away from that. It's part of his game. So I think that actually may bring some good out of him. Everyone just has to just in general, you're not as good as you may look in the first couple games. You're not as bad as you look in the first couple games. Like, it's still a decently long season. People just love to overreact to everything. That's just the nature of it. But I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's the cornerstone of this team. I mean, again, they have the number 1 system in the league for a reason. The reason is ping pong balls, and I'm very happy about that. They will be okay when they need to be. Again, remember that they have a lot of money coming off cap at the end of this year. This was kind of the last year of the get the bad money off the books, and then you're kind of looking forward into next season. It's a weird year anyway. So I don't think you can look at too much anything in this scenario where you're playing the same teams, where you are in an empty arena. It's just weird. Like, you can't draw so much, in my opinion, out of it one way or another.
Yeah, and
two things that both of you guys, two things that both of you guys, touched on quickly that I definitely wanted to talk about tonight is the fact that we do have these new alignment of divisions. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, it's to limit traveling as much as possible so that, these teams aren't regularly going across the country and, limit the chance and exposure to COVID as much as possible. And with that, one thing that I've been seeing a lot from NHL beat writers and on ESPN and stuff like that is, the potential for matchups in Stanley Cup finals. I know one thing that got wrote about a lot was the fact that we could have something, like a Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup finals, so that is something that, could potentially be really exciting come postseason. And the other thing that, I was thinking about there while you guys were talking is, the fact that there are these teams that didn't have those extended, time in the bubble playing in the postseason. For those teams, I feel like the first few weeks there, there's a lot of rust there. They haven't played in such a long time versus these teams that were just in the bubble not so long ago. So, definitely the first few weeks, empty arenas, as you guys said, not playing a long time. You can't really take too much, face value. You got to give time for everybody to get warmed up to this new league and new system and such an odd year that we do have.
Like I said, it's never gonna be as good or as bad as it looks right now. That's just the way I feel about it. Like I think things will normalize. I don't think you can read so much into things early on, especially because there was no preseason. I mean, some teams might just be more prepared, and that's just the reality of it. It doesn't mean that that's how things will end up.
Yeah, and just going back, like Garth said right there, a team like your Rangers, they didn't make the playoffs last year. This is completely new to them. A team like the Islanders, they did something like this, not completely identical, but they did stuff like this for a few months. And I just want to circle back for a moment on Lafreniere. I think the thing with him is that a lot of people see these guys like Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, who are once in a generation talents you'll never see again. And they expect these guys to come in and instantly be point per game. Last season you mentioned Kakko. He had a slow start. Jack Hughes didn't score a goal for a month or two, and people were wondering, is he a bust? No, I still think Jack Hughes can be a very good player. I think he was a good number one pick, but, the league now, these guys aren't going to come in instantly and, put in these massive amount of points unless they're a really, really good player, and probably not on a very good team where someone's going to take away from their point production.
Yeah, I mean, again, McDavid went in there, that was his team immediately. When Crosby went in, that was his team immediately. And even those Pittsburgh teams, like they weren't setting the world on fire when he first got there. And one thing to remember too is they're both centers. Lafreniere comes in as a winger. So when we start talking about these generational type talents, again, I think if you look at number one picks coming into the league, right? The McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews, Crosby, like they're in like their own tier. And then I think Lafreniere is in that next tier, partially because he is a winger. Like it's just the nature of hockey. But having said that, he does tend to drive. He has in his career driven play once you get him across him into the offensive zone, which normally centers will do. So he has that ability to do that as well. But no, everyone wants instant gratification, and that's why teams don't really see rebuilds through, because we've been doing this for 3 years. We need some results. Again, K'Andre Miller was a 2018 draft pick of the New York Rangers. He made his NHL debut last night. And it's probably even a little bit early, in my opinion, because he's only 20 years old. He's a defenseman. But nobody has the patience. Again, they apply what they see in the NBA and the NFL to the NHL, and I just don't think that that's fair, because you're drafting 17 and 18-year-old kids that most of the time aren't really ready to play in the league until they're 20, 21, 22. In some cases later. So, again, the Rangers have done mostly everything right since they put this letter out in 2018. They've rebuilt extremely well, deepest system in the league. And again, that's not to say that they're going to keep all these players. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that they're not going to, when they finally find their way out of this, take some of these guys, consolidate them into better players to play more immediately. That's obviously on the table with guys like Barkov and Dubois and Laine looking for new homes. Again, the Rangers are going to be in those discussions because they have the assets to go trade for them if the team wants them. So again, I think anybody who's jumping off a bridge right now on any team in the league is doing it extremely prematurely. We have a ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to be patient. Look at my team, the Penguins. When Crosby, the team was terrible. People forget that the Penguins literally almost went bankrupt twice, and if not for Mario Lemieux, they'd be playing in Canada somewhere. So they were a terrible team. But you get guys in like obviously Crosby, they drafted Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury. You got two centers right there. You got your goaltender. They got Chris Letang a few years later. That's a nice nice base. And Steven Stamkos, like you mentioned, he was the number one pick. Mm-hmm. The Lightning for quite a few years were not a good team, other than after they had that Eastern Conference Finals loss to the Bruins, they had a few down years, and now they're back in full force. So you got to be patient. Most of these guys are going number one. They're not going to these good teams.
No,
I think.
But there's a theme, though. If you look back to how Chicago won Stanley Cups, they had multiple high number one picks or high first round picks in Taves and Kane. For Tampa Bay, it took a while, but it was Hedman and Stamkos, and they built around them. For Pittsburgh, it was Crosby and Malkin. You can add Jordan Stahl. You can add Marc-Andre Fleury to that mix. For LA, these are teams that picked very high repeatedly. And that has been the formula, unless you Edmonton Oilers, because you take no defense. But that is the premier way to get talent in this league. Look at what these guys are making in their second contracts. Look at a McDavid. Look at a Draisaitl. Like, these guys are making literally over $10 million in their second year or their second contract in a cap league. It makes it so much more difficult when you have guys on entry level deals. That's going to keep things flowing because you're getting production out of a lower cap number. And then you have to, everything has a price, right? I mean, you can say, oh, I can go bring in Sean Couturier and pay him $12 million. Well, he's a great player, not worth $12 million. Everything's all relative to what you're paying for it.
Yeah. And, I want to pivot here and ask a question, much similar to what you asked Brian with your Penguins. What are your realistic expectations for them this season? And, would be a little bit of an overachievement out of them this season?
Well, obviously I always have high expectations with the Penguins. Obviously guys like Malkin and Crosby, they're still there. The base of the team is still there. Now, I think they made a lot of key moves in the offseason. Guys who have been there for a long time. Patrick Hornqvist is gone. They traded away Matt Murray, so they're giving the franchise over to Tristan Jarry. They've made a lot of key moves. We brought in Kasperi Kapanen. I'm interested to see what he does. He actually started with the Penguins. We traded him in the Phil Kessel trade. The rest is history. It's tough to say. I think we've had a few down years. Unfortunately lost the Flyers the opening night. Last I checked, we were losing to them again. Just freaking pisses me off. I hate that team so much. But you can never have your expectations too low with them. That said, would I predict them to win the Stanley Cup or anything like that? I don't think so. I'd like to temper the expectations. I'd say an overachievement would probably be a Eastern Conference Finals appearance. I think that would be a bit of a bounce back because, in my opinion, the loss to the Islanders last year or 2 years ago was an embarrassment. Getting knocked out against the Canadians was not a good look at all in the qualifying round. So I'd like to see him take a next step. Let's get back to that conference finals. Let's see what Tristan Jarry can do as the undisputed starter now. And, hopefully we can have a bounce back.
I would have defensive concerns. That's my chief concern actually out of the first, couple games here is, again, yeah, they're a team that is getting older. There's no question about that. But, it's not necessarily so much Crosby and Malkin. They're still going to give you their numbers. I mean, they need production from guys like Gensel, Brian Rust. They need that secondary scoring to support your bigger players. And, they haven't picked in the first round in quite some time. They've moved guys out because they keep trying to patch the team they currently have. The Matt Murray thing was, I think, more a cap thing than anything else. I don't know what Jarry is going to be, if he's good enough to be a number one. He has not looked good to start the season, but again, I'm not going to jump off a bridge because it's the first two games with no lead-in. Last year was a problem for them against Montreal. That cost me a couple bucks in betting that. But I don't know what to make of them. I think that they're the one. The three teams to me that are in, no matter what's going to happen, is Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington. That fourth spot was going to always come down to Pittsburgh, the Islanders, and the Rangers. And I thought it would be Pittsburgh's to take, but they need to get their defense in order. I'm not sure if that's coaching or if they have the horses, on the roster to do it, but they have to figure that part of it out because, I don't know that Crosby and Malkin can take over a game the way they used to, which means get secondary scoring and play better defense. They've allowed 11 goals in 2 games. It's not rather auspicious beginning, but it's early and it's fixable.
Yeah, and, I think you hit the nail on the head. When I look at this team, a guy, Chris Letang's 33, Crosby's 33, Malkin's 34. And, when I look at our defensive core, sure, Letang, he's good, but he's 33 now. I don't think he's that guy anymore. Brian Dumoulin, I'm a fan of him. He's 29. Cody Ceci's 27. I think Cody Ceci is absolutely terrible. When I look at this defensive core, I'm a fan of John Marino, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, 23, 21. These are promising guys, but they're not established guys. I think when you look at our core, it's either a bunch of, older guys who are established, or guys that are just terrible or they're just young. And, I think our team has a lot of unproven guys on it. Obviously, there's the, regulars everyone would expect. But, you're relying on a lot of young players this year. And we need that secondary scoring, like you mentioned, not just from guys like, Brian Rust and Jake Ginsel. Everyone knows they're good players, but we need guys like Jared McCann, Sam Lafferty, guys that broke into the lineup last year to contribute. Jason Zucker, guys like this, they need to do their part. And, Tristan Jerry, I know he's not looked good, but from what I saw from him last season, I actually think he can be a really good goalie, in my opinion. I told one of my friends this, and it's probably a really unpopular opinion. I think he can be just as good or better than a guy like Carter Hart, who is all the rage now when you look at goalie prospects. So,
look, I'm not going to take anything away from Carter Hart. I mean, playing in the league at 22, he's playing very well. I mean, low key though, he's been very, very good at home and really very not very good on the road. His actual average numbers were below Mackenzie Blackwood's last year. You wouldn't know it by the hype, but that's really what it was. I mean, he's again, it's like I said, the league is moving more and more towards, the rotation in goal. Like, you're not going to see anybody like a Brodeur, play 65 games equivalent. I mean, again, we're using the 82 game equivalent, but to play that like 3/4 of the season, because they're just, whether that's running backs in football, starting pitching in baseball, like they're moving more to that rotational type committee approach. So you need two guys, especially in this season with taxi squads and back-to-backs and same teams. You really kind of need a third guy, so to make sure you're okay. Like I said, I don't know if Jari's going to be a starter or not, but he's going to play the role and see how well they go. If he falters, I think they're in big trouble, because I don't think that they have a lot of answers after him. I think that they had one, but salary cap rears ugly head. Move on. I mean, that's life, but it is a question mark for sure.
And, the problem, like you mentioned, the Penguins, as long as I've watched them, other than a few rare exceptions, they're a team that usually doesn't have the greatest depth for a team of their quality. And I think the problem, like you mentioned, is they always trade away their first-round pick. Pretty much always. And, I understand that they're win now. They want to get these guys in. But, when these guys leave, it doesn't work out. They go to free agency. We don't have, the means to replenish, to get these guys in on these cheap contracts, like you said earlier in the show. We got all these guys, your boy Jack Johnson, we had him on an absolutely horrendous contract. So, I think this is the problem. And, I am a fan of Jim Rutherford, but, I'm really starting to question some of the moves he made in the offseason. He's going to have a lot to answer for this year. I'll say that if it doesn't work out and we fall flat, like you said, I could definitely see him getting the pink slip.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's tough though, Noah, because it's such a weird year. Like, do you really want to make big decisions based upon what you see with everything crumbling around you? And again, Mike Sullivan spent time with the Rangers as an assistant coach to Torts. I was happy to see him win a Stanley Cup. He's always a good soldier with New York. I was kind of surprised, to be blunt. I didn't think he was like, this great hockey mind, but hey, having Crosby and Malkin in their prime is somewhat helpful. Yeah, I mean, patience is going to run thin there. I mean, they don't have a lot of time, and that's the one thing that's working against them. Is if you're playing Mario Brothers, like that clock at the top, like it's going to tick 12 for the Penguins in the very short future, and they have nothing to fall back on. Like they've pushed they are all in with the group that they have. They haven't kept, I think, a first-round pick in a half a dozen seasons. So when this falls off, they're going to literally fall off the planet. Like, and that's where the sense of urgency needs to come in. Like, to be blunt, I don't know that this format lends itself to make the conference finals. They're going to get through Boston or Philadelphia, who they don't look very good at right now, or Washington. I think they're in a very, very tough spot, which kind of goes back to why I said I don't think the Rangers are really a playoff team, because look at the teams they're up against in this compressed, tight schedule. Tampa Bay, it's Carolina, maybe Dallas, and like nobody else. Like there is no team I can say, that's a playoff team like Tampa. You can say out in the West, Colorado, St. Louis, and Vegas, I'm not going to disagree with you. They're all going to get in. That's Tampa's division to lose, bar none. And I like Carolina, but that's Tampa's division to lose. For the Penguins and for the Rangers, they're in a nuclear war division. It's tough. And you can easily say there's three teams ahead of them. I feel that way. They're fighting for one spot, Pittsburgh's going to go up against the Islanders. It's offense versus defense. I mean, they got to figure it out though, because they can't be losing. They can't be letting up 11 goals in 2 games and expect to win.
Yeah,
the offense is
And I just want to reply to that comment I saw there from John asking me what I thought about the Crosby contract. I don't have a problem with the Crosby contract. His average annual value when he signed it so long ago is only $8.7 million. For a guy like Sidney Crosby to be on a contract with that annual value is incredible, because he has consistently been, fantastic for us. And if you actually look at, the advanced details of his contract, it's actually pretty front loaded. He's making $12 million in years like 2014, 2015. When you look at it, he's making 9.6 this year, and then actually falls off, $9 million in 2021, but then 2022 through 2024, he only makes $3 million a year. So, absolutely no problems with that. But, like we've said, the window is, fading fast. So he's going to be here for a while. We just got to see how much longer we can compete. The window is really, really short.
Like help is not on the way. So they have to win with what they got, and I don't know. I don't know that they're built to do that, because I think that like Toronto, for example, like Toronto's a very top heavy team. They're great top. I mean, a ridiculously good top, but there's just not that much behind it. Pittsburgh's kind of Toronto light in that you have your Crosby Malkins, and I guess you're getting your Gensels and your Rusts. I mean, Jason Zucker was a nice ad. I mean, not gonna make or break anything, but like, just if you're stopping the top guys, the secondary guys are not going to be able to handle the load, and that's the concern. That's what I mean. Like everybody's like all over the Flyers because they have like 4 lines that can score. But I look at the Flyers and I say like none of their forwards stands out to me as a superstar player. I think their best forward is probably Sean Couturier, who was hurt tonight's game. 2-way guy, talented kid. He's going to get a very good contract the second time around. But like, nobody is a pure sniper goal scorer. Nobody's a Kucherov. Nobody's a McDavid. Nobody's a Matthews. Nobody's a McKinnon. Nobody's a Panarin. Like, they just got some guys. And if you look at teams that have won Stanley Cups, there have been elite scorers on all of them. And which is my chief criticism of the Flyers this whole time with their rebuild was like, not a nice players I like, but they're not foundational pieces. They're not pieces that you can say that's the face of my team. Outside of maybe Ivan Provorov, who's a defenseman who I like, but again, defenseman. He's not. Look, again, the teams that have won have had heavy hitters up front. Even St. Louis had Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, who's criminally underrated. Like, that's how they've won. Outside of maybe Boston and 10, teams have had elite players up front that have won them championships. And for the Flyers, like, I don't see them having that, which is why I think when they come up against a team like a Boston, like a Washington, that's the difference. And your depth is nice, but you need the elite guys too.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I got a lot of criticism for this last year. I said the Islanders would beat them in 7, and you know what? I was actually spot on, because the Islanders, a guy like Matt Barzal, it doesn't have to be a Crosby or McDavid. A guy like Matt Barzal, he can take a game over. Mm-hmm. And I think the Flyers are really good top to bottom, like you said. But Sean Couturier, Konechny, Giroux isn't the same guy he used to be. These are all good players, but they're not great players. We mentioned Tampa's depth. Well, they still got guys like, Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point. Steven Stamkos came back for a game. He was fantastic in that game. You can't understate how big that had to be for their momentum. We mentioned the Blackhawks, Taves and Kane. You mentioned Tarasenko. I mean, the list just goes on and on. You need those guys who can, the leader of your team, Jamie Benn last season, or Tyler Seguin as well. You need those guys like that. And, in my opinion, I think they have a very good roster. I do think they're a good team. I'm so pissed off they're beating me. That just really ticks me off so much. But, do they have that guy that can take them to the Stanley Cup? I just don't see it right now. I could be wrong, but it's not something I would predict.
No, and I think this format actually hurts them because, like I said, they're going to come up. They're in a tough division, which again they'll make the playoffs. I don't doubt that they won't. Which it's kind of funny though. Like, for so many teams, the regular season doesn't even matter because you can pencil them in right now. Like, they don't need to necessarily light the world on fire to get in, like a Tampa, like a Boston, like a St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas. I mean, you just write them all in. They're in. I mean, even up in the north, Toronto and Edmonton are going to be in the playoffs this year. Like, we know that without having to play the season. So there's more certainty because you have to just be the top 4 of this group, as opposed to being a top team out of all of these other teams, and weird stuff happens, and neither here nor there. Like I said, I think that when they don't have a face guy, they'll have a better bottom six than most teams, probably quite a few teams. They're not gonna have as good of a top six as any team because I don't think they have stars there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
one thing that could potentially be an issue that I've been thinking about here is the fact that we're not in the bubble. We're not playing a season. Teams are traveling. What could potentially happen with these teams that don't have a lot of depth, that are very top heavy, reliant on that first line? Should they have issues with COVID, and all of a sudden that top line is compromised greatly, and they're relying on a lot of these guys that they can't rely on to begin with.
Yeah, it's fair, and that's why the taxi squads are in play this year, which is going to help some teams with cap, just because they can move guys off and on and lower their daily expenditure. But it's an absolutely fair point. Again, if the wrong guy gets it at the wrong time, it could derail an entire season.
Yeah, and no, I want to circle back a little bit here. One thing that you talked on, you chose Islanders in 7 against Flyers, in the postseason last year is, I think that they were huge benefactors of their circumstances. The Islanders really struggled with goaltending in that series. They kind of were going back and forth, and they weren't really having, like Varlamov came up huge in multiple games when they, advanced and played the Lightning. They didn't really have that. So, I feel like that, definitely benefited them.
Yeah, but I think in that series, Garth, I think they had timely goaltending. I think, like you said, they didn't have great goaltending, but I think it was Thomas Greiss in that Game 7 when they won 4-0. I thought he did pretty well. Varlamov, I saw him have some, odd games. I think in like Game 5 they outshot the Flyers something like 50-20, and they lost that game in overtime 4-3, I believe it was. But he still had some good games. Like you said, the further you get in the playoffs, I think Vasilevsky was really good for you guys. I think that once they got that far, I think the difference in talent just really started to show because of the team you guys built. I think that they did a very good job to make the Eastern Conference Finals. But, you guys were just so loaded.
Yeah, and, my personal take with Vasilevsky, he does get a lot of hype as one of the best goaltenders in the league, and rightfully so. But, for me, the biggest thing with him is he isn't going to go out and, absolutely hold a team scoreless most nights. But the fact of the matter is that he also, is not going to give up these crazy games where you see absolute breakdowns in the goal where the guy's, giving up 5 or 6 goals and getting pulled in the second period. And with a team like us that can, put up points and score at will when we do get hot, that's a huge benefit.
Garth, they're running away with that division. They are. No one's going to catch them. They're winning it right. They've won it right now. They're not going to be caught. I mean, we do a fantasy hockey league where we draft team goaltenders, and I had the 7th overall pick, and I took Tampa Bay, and I said, just mark in 40 wins right now because there's no way with the crap in that division, especially the bottom of it, that this team doesn't just absolutely run away with it. And that's my feeling without Kucherov, which is kind of crazy because that's how good they are. That's how deep they are, especially on the blue line. Nobody talks about it, even with Hedman. Hedman gets no play. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Hedman's just freaking incredible, in my opinion, the best defenseman in the league. I thought it was, there was a conversation to be had last year. I'm a big fan of a guy like Roman Josi. Obviously Erik Karlsson's had a lot of hype over the years. I think he's regressed, but I think last season he showed he's easily the best two-way defenseman in the NHL, in my opinion. And, they got to be the favorites until proven otherwise, in my opinion, not only in that division, but in the entire league. And, obviously, Garth, you asked us what our expectations are. I just want to ask you, is it cup or bust for you?
I don't know if I would say cup or bust. I do feel like we need to at least make the finals, but certainly there's a ton of pressure to repeat there. The expectations, not only this year, but for years have been really high. I feel like we finally get one, and one is not enough to the fan base. I'm down here. I'm not too far from Tampa. They expect to win every year, so the players know what they're getting into. The pressure's there. But, like Brian said, we absolutely have to win the division. I don't see why we shouldn't, unless, we have really, really bad issues with COVID and, we just lose a ton of guys to that. But yeah, definitely we have to win the division to start with. I want to get into postseason too much just because, with all the variables, who knows who will be playing. But yeah, I got to win the division. Anything other than that is definitely underachieving. This team, yeah, we lost a few guys here and there in the offseason, but top to bottom is, arguably just as good. I want to see a really big season from Joseph. I really like him. He's got a lot of minutes in these first two games. He's looked pretty good so far. Stamkos, I believe he's already at like 2 or 3 goals through these first two games. I know he had one last night. Last I checked, he was at 1 tonight. So, I'm expecting a really, really big year from him. With Kuchel, he's got to, fill the shoes, which I feel like he's going to do undoubtedly. And, like I said, just win the division, get to the playoff, be that 1 seed. Hoping that by playoffs there will be fans and I get to go to a game, obviously. And there is some kind of home ice. I don't think we're going to be seeing packed by any means, but hopefully there is some kind of home ice advantage.
The only team that scares me for them is Carolina. That's it. We know they can beat Dallas. They just did that. Nashville, I think, has been a team that's always there's such a tease because like they have players, but it just never materializes. And I think they're kind of they're on the down slope, of the curve there. So again, when I say that Tampa was helped by the realignment, no Boston, no Toronto, and conceivably both of those teams may end up in the Final Four. So it's a wild year. And again, last year was a wild year. This is the world we live in right now. And hopefully come October next year, we're in a better situation and we can have a normal year, but this is where we are. And at least we have hockey, but I mean, Tampa's in the third round. I can't pick any team to beat them in a series within the 8 that they play.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that's no disrespect because, like I said, I still think they're the favorites overall. But when they're in such a favorable division, you have to really favor them. And like you said, the past, it's already been 10 months with this whole lockdown and everything. It's just been, I'm just so happy that we at least have some type of sports. Obviously, it's not ideal everything that's going on. We want to see 20,000 fans in the arena going crazy when there's a goal scored and the goal horn's going off, but. Let's just be glad that we can at least have what's going on right now. I thought they did a great job with the NHL playoffs. I think the realignment of what they're doing now with the back-to-backs and stuff like that and the taxis, like you said, it's the best of an absolutely terrible situation. And, Gary Bettman, he gets a lot of crap and a lot of it is really deserved, but I do have to give him some credit for this. I think NHL has done a great job with the whole coronavirus. And, I'm just excited to keep watching hockey for months to come.
They're making it work, and there'll be lessons they learn from this. I mean, there's speculation they might continue to do some of these back-to-backs for, from travel cost savings. When you can play teams like that, you're playing them once or twice in a row or whatever, or locally like that, you're able to cut down on travel costs. I mean, really, and we're not going to see it as much here in the States, but that North Division is a media darling in Canada because everything is a war. Everything is just to the nth degree. I mean, it's not like it is here. I mean, up there it's noon and night, and that's going to be, it's a lot of fun up there. I would never advocate keeping this setup, but there are some short-term benefits that are at the very least interesting.
Yeah, and one thing, you mentioned, Brian, that they're doing pretty much everything possible to make this work is, they did, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I don't know if you have a strong opinion one way or not, but the fact that they are, basically adding advertising to the helmets is something that was talked about, but from my understanding, when they met with the NHLPA and to discuss, the possibility of starting up a season as soon as possible, and having a somewhat regular season as far as, time frame of the year, they basically told these guys that, hey, we're losing tons of money with the fact that we are struggling with COVID and we're not going to be able to have, all these ticket sales that we normally would have. We got to come up with ways to, recoup some of that money so we can run the league, but also pay you guys, because long-term, if this were to keep up and they didn't find alternatives, ultimately they wouldn't be able to pay these guys what they're making. and the NHLPA seemed to be pretty understanding and be for it, to keep getting paid.
Well,
No problems for me, at least.
Look, they get X% of hockey-related revenue. That's hockey-related revenue, so the players make money. I mean, I get it. What I will say is that, A, I hope it stays for just 1 year. I don't want to see it next year. B, I better not see a damn patch on anybody's uniform. I think that's ridiculous. I don't want them to turn into European hockey or anything like that, because that would really upset me. Thirdly, I know that they're putting the logo, the sponsorships right on the side of the helmets there. It bothers me they can't put a team logo on the helmet too, like in the center or something. I mean, like, come on, like there is a happy medium here. I mean, I get it, but like, okay, let me just see a Ranger logo. Let me see a Penguins logo. It's like something. It's just, again, for those of you who watch international hockey, I mean, in Europe, I mean, their jerseys are covered. It's like they're almost like a NASCAR basically. Which I always resented, like people that want to buy a jacket of their favorite driver. Like if it's Jeff Gordon, they're walking around with a big, huge DuPont logo on their front. Like it's not like cool. Like, do you work for DuPont? If nobody knows what that means. Like it's just weird. So I don't want to see American professional sports go that direction, but I completely get it. I mean, I understand. I mean, they've named the divisions. Like, I mean, if the Flyers win the Mass Mutual East, am I going to walk into Wells Fargo next year and see a banner that says Mass Mutual East Champions with the Mass Mutual logo on it? Like you're going to see a Honda logo on a banner. Like that would be like peak idiocy. But look, it's just, this is a time in our lives we will never forget for all the wrong reasons. And this will be something funny about it in 20 years.
Yeah, I got to agree there with you, Brian. I understand it for this season, but I do hope that long-term it doesn't stay. If it were team logos, absolutely go for it. No way am I against that. But, long term, I don't want to see, as you said, the Honda on the side of helmets or DuPont or, whatever it may be.
I have never purchased anything because I saw it on somebody wearing it in a sporting article. Like I'm not going to go, get a Chase card because there's a Chase logo on the Ranger helmet. Like I'm just dumb. Whatever. Make that money. I don't care.
Yeah, and like we said, it's probably the best in Idaho's situation. Does it look really stupid? I think it does, but I mean, whatever. And now, before we move on to something else, I just want to ask you, Brian, real quick. Obviously you've heard a lot about escrow and these deferred payments. It's been a big talking point since they signed the new CBA a few months ago. Just for our viewers out there who might not be too into the financial side of the game, what are your thoughts on all that? And could you maybe give an explanation of what the big deal is?
So escrow is the players have X% of their salary that they keep in an account because, again, the players get the percentage of hockey-related revenue for the year. You have your stated contract value, but if for whatever reason hockey-related revenue does not hit their target, then you may have to give back X% of your salary. It's complicated, but it's simple. If the league make 90% of what they thought they were going to make, well, then you're getting 90% of your paycheck. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. The reason that you're going to see a flat cap now for a couple of years is because they're just trying to move money around so that they just don't see a cap getting destroyed. The NFL, for example, you're hearing the cap's going to drop by $20 million. That's going to be just abysmal for a good dozen teams because caps go up every year, right? So when the Rangers signed Artemi Panarin to an $11 million a year deal, it's actually a little more than that. They're assuming that, again, you're getting a percentage of cap right now that will continue to decrease at the length of that deal because the cap keeps going up. They're not going to get that now. So for some big market teams, it's a problem because, again, you thought you were going to have more breathing room as the years went on, which you're not going to get. For the small market teams, they may actually set internal caps. Like, for example, hey, you know what? Cap's 81. We're not going above 70. This is how much we can afford. It's dollars and cents. This is, at the end of the day, sports is a business. It is not necessarily there to win. It's hey, we have to start making some money here, or at least be break even. So that's the problem for the small market teams. For the players, again, best of a bad situation. Like either we don't play at all and we don't get paid. And the league even said we would save a hell of a lot more money if we just didn't play. But we understand like we have to keep our league going. Like we don't want to, hockey be in the distant fourth sport in America. Like you don't want to, lose all sorts of awareness in the world outside of your core fans because you're not on TV and you're not in the limelight. So they get it. It's an investment in the future. What they're trying to do is with a flat cap, as revenues get higher in future years, it'll offset the loss of revenue this year, which they're going to be supposedly signing a new TV deal. I want to say after this season or after next season. So you're going to see a bump up in the future, but they got to get there. So that's where you're seeing some of that. I mean, the players are like, listen, like we agreed to a deal before the bubble. We're going to go by that. The owners were, I think, trying to negotiate something better, but to their credit, say, listen, like you're getting 50% of hockey related revenue. If we have no hockey related revenue, 50% of zero is zero. So like, what do you want to do here? Like you can't squeeze, water out of a cactus. Like we'll work with you, but I guess whatever they figured out, whatever they were going to do. Again, the cap staying flat is going to at least keep a constant, you're going to know what your expenses are. As other money comes in, it's going to offset the loss this year. And I mean, I would honestly expect ticket prices to balloon once we're out of this. They have a lot of money to make up for.
Yeah, and I think like we've said so many times, it's just kind of the best of a bad situation, in my opinion. The NHL would lose so much money if they didn't have a season. I think that's why it was really good that they were actually able to, come back in the bubble, get the playoffs done like they did. And, you just got to give them a lot of credit. And I think, like you said, with the flat cap, Brian, you're going to see, what teams are the best run, what teams can best adapt to this, unforeseen situation, who's going to be the best to save the money, stuff like that. And, which players you're going to see are kind of going to, go back on what they said when they signed the agreement, going to complain about, potentially losing some money because of the loss of revenue. I think it's going to be very interesting to see.
Baseball and hockey are the two sports that rely the most on the gate. And if you have no gate, you have the income's just not there. NFL's got a great TV deal, so does the NBA. But they're fighting through it, and they're going to lose money. They'll make some of it back on the back end, and hopefully, like I said, we're on some kind of a upward trajectory with a new TV deal and a 30-second team in the fall.
Well, guys, we do still need to talk some NFL playoffs, and I do have another guest patiently waiting. So unless there's anything that you guys, really want to touch on that you didn't get a chance to or maybe forgot to, kind of going to wrap up the hockey talk. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Really great to have Brian on here. You guys got to check him out. He puts on a great show. And, as you guys could see tonight, he really knows hockey and just sports in general.
I sound good. I don't know, Jack. I just make it sound good. No, I appreciate it. Listen, guys, make sure you're watching Sweet Tea every week. It's our newest show in the Sports Box. We love having the guys on. They do a really good job. They're getting better and better every week. And, we just even from their first show to now, they're just so much more comfortable. And you get that way the more you do anything. So definitely support the guys and support the network. We got shows more days than not, and hopefully we have more coming for you in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And like we always say, check out all the shows on the Sports Box because everybody puts on a great show. It's not just one or two shows.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. I mean, this was so much fun. Hopefully, as the season goes on, we can keep on doing this a bit more consistently. I just want to say, we're very grateful for the opportunity to be here on the Sports Box with Sweet Tea. And, obviously, thank you to everyone involved for that opportunity, especially you, Brian. And it was great just, sitting down and talking some hockey with you, man.
Listen, I'm only a text message away. Don't be a stranger.
All right.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you, man. You too. Oh, man. That went way longer than I thought it would, actually.
I know, and it wasn't like we were just kind of rambling on. We covered a lot.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody enjoyed our hockey talk tonight. I did. I will say that, and I'll be honest and straightforward. By no means am I a huge hockey expert. I'm kind of new to the sport, and I'm learning more as I go. But as you guys can tell, Noah and Brian really know their stuff, and it was really awesome just to sit back and hear you guys take on things and just soak it all in.
Yeah, man, that was just so much fun. And, we haven't even gotten into my favorite sport yet. It's some NFL football, man. The playoffs last week were incredible. Watched every single game for the weekend. Just a lot of action to get into, and I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, so, with that said, no further ado, we are going to go ahead and jump into some NFL football. I've been waiting all week to talk about this, Noah. Yeah, another great slate of football this weekend, and we're going to do the same thing we did last weekend and just go in order of the games being played. And we kick off again tomorrow. We got Rams and Packers at 4:35 up there in Lambeau, which I was checking out the weather. Surprisingly, no, it really isn't going to be that cold. I think they're looking at like 38 degrees at kickoff, no snow, and I was going to get on here and say that, should it be cold, potentially snow, that definitely hurts the Rams' chances. But, man, they went up there to Seattle, and it definitely was not warm by any means. and put a shellacking on Seattle. Probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen by Russell, and I don't think it was completely on him. I think that defense was just all over them from start to finish. They're putting him on the ground. They're, making him force a lot of throws because he was running out of time and the pocket was collapsing. And, really that offense just never got going. And guys like Aaron Donald just had their way in that game, Noah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said a few weeks ago, I think the Rams were a much more complete team with the Seahawks, or than the Seahawks. I thought the Seahawks, like you said, they had a deadly offense. Russell Wilson had a fantastic start to the season. Guys like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the outside, they're phenomenal playmakers. But, the Rams, you got to give them a lot of credit because they started this game with John Wolford, the backup, and he did a serviceable job. Unfortunately, he got hurt. It was pretty scary. He had to go off in an ambulance, so best wishes to him. But even when Jared Goff came in that game, Garth, he wasn't really lighting it up. I thought it was just a good, solid team performance. Aaron Donald left that game in the third quarter, I believe it was. I think they said it might have been a concussion. And then, they still did a really good job. They only held the Seahawks to 20 points, I think it was. And one of those touchdowns was just a late kind of garbage time touchdown, which was something like 30-13. They went into Seattle, and they pretty much, frankly, dominated them. I thought that was a fantastic performance by the Rams. We've talked about them a lot this season, how they've kind of been flying under the radar. They can't fly under the radar anymore because they're going on the number 1 seed in Green Bay. This is going to be an absolutely fantastic matchup. Obviously, you got to say the Packers are the favorites, but if they take the Rams lightly, they could be bounced out easily. So this is going to be a really good game to watch.
Yeah, and I think most importantly, we're going to see just how prepared the Packers are. I know sometimes bye weeks can be really beneficial for teams, and other times they can come out, and look a little bit sluggish and off pace. And for me, for the Rams, your recipe to win this game obviously is play defense like you have. But as far as offense goes, control possession, eat up clock. You don't want to get into a shootout where your defense is going to, potentially get gassed and not be playing up to the level that they have. Because Aaron Rodgers in this offense all season, with the exception of 1 or 2 games, has been absolutely unreal. Devontae Adams, on fire. A guy I've always been a huge fan of, Noah, and has good seasons and good numbers. But, man, this year is just something else for that guy. And I think it's really just because of supporting cast. There's a lot of guys on that team that make big plays. They might not have gaudy numbers, but here and there, they're just coming up with these big plays. Takes a lot of pressure. Adams is no longer, just the only option at the wide receiver. I feel like Aaron Rodgers for a few seasons there really lacked at the skill position, and it showed the Packers had their struggles. But now, he's got a pretty damn good supporting cast around him, and we're going to get to see a really good battle in Jalen Ramsey and Devontae Adams. I've seen a lot of talk this week. Can Ramsey, shut him down? I'm going to be blatantly honest with you, Noah. I don't see it happening. Maybe Devontae Adams doesn't torch the Rams, but he's definitely, probably 1 or 2 touchdowns, right around 100 yards would be my guess. I just, props to Jalen Ramsey, great cornerback. I just don't think he's an absolute lockdown, shutdown corner that's going to, keep the ball from Devontae Adams all game.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to be a fantastic matchup. Like you said, a big fan of Devontae Adams. I think this is a guy who for years has been very underrated. And in the past, I'd say 2 or 3, he's finally getting that respect he deserves. And he has gone from, just being this guy that's flown under the radar just to being an absolute machine. And, like you said, Jalen Ramsey, fantastic player. But for a guy like Devontae Adams, who scored 18 touchdowns this season, almost 1,400 yards, that is a lot of workload he's done, and yet he's consistently been excellent this season. So I think it'll be a great matchup. I certainly don't see, either guy just dominating the other. I think it'll be a very good matchup between 2 of the best players in the league. But like you said, and this is something you got to give a lot of credit to. I think since Matt LaFleur has come into the Green Bay Packers, since they let Mike McCarthy go, the team has done much better. They underachieved for a few seasons there. Obviously, there was that one season where Rodgers got hurt. They had DeShone Kizer. But since they brought in Matt LaFleur, this team has really done well. And you have to give credit. The Packers last season, I thought they had a terrible defense. It says right there, they're 9th in total defense. This is a really good team right here. It's not a team of, in my opinion, of the past where the Packers had these really high, high-quality superstar players, but then other than that, the team wasn't very good. I think this Packers team is very complete, like you mentioned. You can have a guy like a Devontae Adams who just can torch your secondary. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, like I've said, and you agree with me, he is the MVP this year. A guy like Aaron Jones, 5.5 yards per carry is just absolutely phenomenal. And then, on defense, you got guys, this is Darius Smith, 12.5 sacks. Tackles for loss, you have guys with, several tackles for loss, 16.5 for Smith, Preston Smith with 8, Rashawn Gary and Chris Barnes, 6.5 each. And then when you look at the secondary, Darnell Savage has had four picks this year. Jair Alexander, by the way, is a fantastic corner.
I'm glad you mentioned him, Noah, because if you didn't, I was going to say the same thing. Man, has that kid developed, and he deserves a lot of praise because, man, has he been really damn good this season.
Yeah, man. My guy Calvin Ridley, I think he's a fantastic player. Second team All-Pro, well-deserving. When we played the Packers in week 4, I think Calvin Ridley had 0 catches against Jair Alexander. So this guy is an absolute stud in the secondary. He's removed a lot of doubt that I think they've had in that position for a few years where, the Packers put up 35 points, but they're going to get torched in the secondary. I don't really get that feeling anymore. And, I'm glad we agree on Jair because I think he is a fantastic player. And, him and Jalen Ramsey in this game, 2 of the best corners in the NFL, it's going to be interesting to see what they do against their matchups.
Yeah, most definitely. And one thing that I look for in this game, Noah, is Jared Goff, honestly. And just the Rams offense in general, because they really, even should their defense play really well, they're still going to have to put up points. And like you mentioned, to maybe some people's surprise, by no means is this Packers defense, a bunch of slouches and, ranked bottom in the league like we have seen in years past. This is a defense that's very, very capable of winning this team a game, should the offense skip a beat. And you just went through all the numbers. They do have playmakers at pretty much every level in that defense. So, for me, Rams defense, I think is going to show up maybe late in the game. They might get gassed and, might let up some big plays, but early on, I feel like they're definitely going to be there for that team. For me, it's going to be Jared Goff in that offense and the rushing attack, because honestly, they have been able to run the ball pretty good with guys who definitely aren't household names, so what is Jared Goff going to do? And also, how banged up is he? Because last week he wasn't even going to play unless he had to. And, lo and behold, he did have to play and he came in and, he definitely didn't hold them back, but I don't think he was 100%.
Yeah, and I think the main thing with Jared Goff is how's that thumb coming along? Because I told you best last week very clearly, if Jared Goff played that game, I thought the Rams would beat the Seahawks. Well, he did play parts of the game, but they didn't win it because of him. They won it because of Cam Akers is an absolute beast from FSU. He can just ground and pound you, and he's only a rookie. This guy has such high potential. I'm a big fan of him. I always have been. What is Jared Goff going to do? Can Cam Akers, have another great game? Can the Rams offense stay balanced? Because, you mentioned with the bye week, Garth, sometimes that works against you. I remember, the Packers went 15-1 the year after they won the Super Bowl. They had that first round bye, obviously, and then the Giants came in there and they pretty much whooped them down, obviously went on to win the Super Bowl. So are the Packers going to be a bit rusty in this game? Because if they're rusty against a team like the Rams, it could definitely bite them in the butt. But, I don't know about you. I think this is, obviously all the matchups are great. This probably is my favorite just because, both these teams I think are just so well balanced. I'm probably going to pick the Packers by 3 or 4. But, what a spectacle this is going to be.
Yeah, I have to agree. This game as well is going to be the Packers. I don't expect them to win in big fashion. I mean, it could be definitely is possible should the Rams not show up. I think this is going to be a very close game that's probably by, anywhere from 3 to 10 points, one possession, or maybe just, a touchdown and a field goal. But, like I said, biggest question mark is going to be Jared Goff. First of all, how healthy is he? Second of all, how well will he play? And should he not, is Cam Akers going to have another phenomenal performance like we've seen and be able to carry the load for that Rams offense? But with that said, I got to go Packers. One score. going to take them at home in Lambeau to advance to the NFC Championship game and play the winner of that Bucs-Saints game, which we will get into later. But there is a comment here, Noah. It's not playoff specifically related. I do want to touch on it real quick because we have seen a lot of teams both looking and hiring coaches this week, with the big name being Urban Meyer, obviously, to Jacksonville. Just trying to find the comment here now. But, my team, the Chargers, also still looking for a coach, although I have been hearing everything is, Brian Daboll, and the reason they haven't hired anybody yet is the fact that he is still coaching. But, yeah, your guys, the Falcons there, they offered the offensive coordinator for the Titans. Is that somebody that you wanted to get, Noah?
It's really tough to say. I think, when I talked about this a few days ago and I heard the news, I was like, hard pass. And, thank you for the question there. John, best hire, it's obviously tough to say right now. I obviously hope it's Smith. But, Garth, my opinion is, at the time I was looking at it, I saw the Titans play a game where I really questioned their play calling. I thought that the running game wasn't working. Ryan Tannehill is statistically the number one quarterback in play action passes in the league. In the first half of that game, they were averaging 1 yard per play on first down plays. Their run pass discrepancy was something like 9-2. I thought that he should have passed the ball a lot more than he did. And, his offense, which has some good talent on it, I was really unimpressed. And so when I heard that news at the time, I was a bit upset about it. Now that it's actually official and I kind of have more time to think about it a little rationally, I can't really complain too much. He's our guy. He's our guy now. I'm going to support him. And, I can't be a hypocrite here. I've said consistently, I want an offensive coach in here. I don't want another defensive coordinator like a Mike Smith or Dan Quinn. I want an offensive guy. And he is an offensive guy. So, obviously time will tell. I'd say if I had to grade it from a 1 to 10, I'm probably about a 6 on it right now. Let's just hope he does well. Hopefully, he can rebuild our offense a bit. Maybe we can finally get a running game going, which we've really lacked consistently since Michael Turner left. And, hopefully he can get some guys in here on the defensive staff who can, start to rebuild the defense as well, because, I'm just so sick and tired of seeing this team with all these talented players just be ruined by what, in my opinion, is completely incompetent management and head coaching. So we'll see what he does. I'm low key excited about it.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you there. No, I would give it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. With a lot of potential to increase. Should he have a good season. But like you said, obviously on paper, Titans had a very good offense. They put up great numbers. They were in the top 5 all this past season. But, like you said, there were some very questionable play calling. And me personally, one thing that I did notice with the Titans offense is when Derrick Henry was not having big games and really wasn't putting up the best numbers like we're used to seeing from him, the offense as a whole really struggled. I don't know the exact number if this is true. It seems like every game that he was held to under 100 yards, I believe they lost, or if they did win, it was just barely. So, there's definitely some question marks, and that was it so much that he, these numbers were relying on how good of an offensive coordinator he was, or was it more so that, he benefited from the players and personnel on the offense with such a great offensive line and a guy like Derrick Henry, to relieve so much pressure on a quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, who has, I wouldn't say one of the best receiving cores overall in the league, but definitely some talented guys to throw the ball to. A.J. Brown's absolutely phenomenal. I love him. But yeah, let's, I wish the best, obviously, for you guys. I got nothing against the Falcons. I like to see you guys do good. And I'm glad that you guys got an offensive-minded guy for sure, because, I know you guys have had Dan Quinn and been, everything was kind of defense-oriented after Shanahan left, and, we know that didn't work out the greatest. But let's go ahead and jump into our next game of tomorrow, and this one, I'm just as excited for as the first game that we discussed, and that's this Ravens at Bills game, our Saturday night game. Up there in Buffalo, Bills are rolling right now. They're hot. a lot of people were giving them some criticism this week, and me as a biased viewer of that game, rooting for the Colts, rooting for Phillip Rivers, I had to try to pump the brakes on some of these guys and say, Colts team was phenomenal. By no means was that, close win over them. That should not bring any criticism of this Buffalo Bills team. They took on a team that was top 10 in the league in offense and defense. A guy in Phillip Rivers who was undefeated in the wild card round before this loss. Absolutely a big time win for them, something to build a lot of momentum going into this game. And, should the Ravens actually not really show up the best, Bills could run away because, as we all know, that offense is absolutely phenomenal, led by Josh Allen having a career year.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that Colts-Bills games. Obviously, we're getting into our picks again, this week. It's really exciting. We both picked the Packers. Last week, I went 5-1. Unfortunately, those Titans ruined it for me. You want to tell everyone here, Garth, what your record was?
I could be wrong here, but I do believe I only picked 2 games correctly.
Yeah, so hopefully you have a better week this time this week, man. But in all seriousness, I think the Colts in that game, they played very well. I just think they made a lot of key mistakes, and after I watched that game, I had to put a lot of questioning on Frank Reich. I thought he was very aggressive in that game, which you got to respect. You live by it, you die by it. But unfortunately for them, they died by it because, I think that, Rodrigo, he missed a field goal at some point. They passed up another field goal to go for it on 4th down. They didn't get it on 4th and goal. They went for a 2-point conversion I didn't really even think they needed, and they missed that as well. So, that's several points right there that they passed up. They lost this game by 3, Garth. And, before the half, they had a 4th down, I believe it was, against the Bills. Some guy jumps offside on a snap count. And what do you know? The Bills score a touchdown off that. The Colts played a very good game and they're a very good team, but you make those mistakes like that against a team like the Bills on the road, you're not going to win. And, sure, you can say the Bills, did they play their best game? Probably not, but they didn't make those key mistakes like the Colts did. And, looking at the Ravens, they played a great game. Obviously, they shut Derrick Henry down. They absolutely mauled that offensive line. That defense is phenomenal. My main question for this game is that, the quarterback position. What is Lamar going to do in this game? He threw an early pick in that game last week. He didn't do anything that really lit the world on fire, but I thought, he made some key plays. Obviously, he scored a 50-yard rushing touchdown. I think he made some good key throws on the run when he was being pressured outside the pocket, especially on some 3rd and long. So, kind of an okay game, but he made some good plays. But Josh Allen, man, I mean, when I was watching him against the Colts, this guy can throw it 50, 60 yards from anywhere on the field. He's on the sideline getting almost knocked out of bounds by 3 or 4 guys, and he just throws this perfect ball. And I saw him make about 2 or 3 plays like that against the Colts. There's a reason this guy's in MVP running. This is a very good game between 2 high-quality teams. I think it'll be interesting to see if the Ravens can exploit that the Bills aren't the best in their run defense, and that is the Ravens' main strength. But I think it will be decided by quarterback play. I think Josh Allen will have a great game. I think Lamar might struggle a little bit. I'm going to go Bills by probably 7.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to agree with you there as well. No, I'm going to take the Bills at home. I just feel like this is a team that's red hot, that's riding a lot of momentum. They did play last week. They didn't have a bye week that could potentially lead to some hangover. So, I definitely think the Ravens are going to come to play. I think that rush game against a team that doesn't defend the run all that well is for sure going to keep them in the game. I think that Josh Allen and that offense, and like you said, the ability to just make the throws, is going to be just a little bit too much for that Ravens team. A guy that I saw this week, that was talking about Josh Allen and comparing him to a guy, and Aaron Rodgers was actually Richard Sherman. And he was talking about exactly what you said. The throws this kid can make, the arm strength and the accuracy is unreal. Compared it to Aaron Rodgers and how he could be flushed out of the pocket, throwing across his body and bomb the ball 60 yards down the field to the opposite side, to the hash marks. And he's like, you can't cheat, because if you do, this kid's going to punish you deep, whether it's the same side of the field, the opposite side of the field, in the pocket, outside the pocket. It doesn't matter. And that imposes, even more challenge on a defense, because if you get caught cheating, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point by Richard there. Obviously, he's a smart guy. He went to Stanford. He knows what he's on about. And I said that at the draft. Back in 2018, I thought Josh Allen had the highest potential in that class. I thought he could be a guy like an Aaron Rodgers. I'm obviously not comparing him to Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, is the most talented quarterback the game has ever seen. But he is kind of an Aaron Rodgers light, if you know what I mean. He can make those throws from anywhere. He has fantastic mobility, and he works hard, man. He has improved every single year he's been in the league, from kind of a bad rookie quarterback breaking in, he was raw, to kind of a middle of the road guy last year. He had some good runs, some bad runs, and obviously this year he's been fantastic. So yeah, I love Josh Allen. I think Richard Sherman is right on the mark there, and I'm excited to see what he does in this game because like you alluded to there, you can make a good play, you can pressure him out of the pocket or whatever, do your job right. The guy doesn't even have to be wide open. He can be well covered. He can still make a play. And, that is just so important to your team. It's very demoralizing to an defense as well. I'm really excited to see what kind of game he can have and what great plays he's going to make because it's not a matter of if he's going to make them, in my opinion, it's when.
Most definitely. And John commenting that Marcus Peters might be the best cornerback in the league. I tell you what, he is going to be tested tomorrow night, Noah, because the Bills have a true number one for, what seems like the first time in forever in Stephon Diggs. And just like the guy Devontae Adams we were just talking about a moment ago, this guy is having an unreal season. And he's just like Devontae Adams, should you slip up one-on-one on him, he's going to make you pay. But really what I saw last week out of this Bills offense is not only was Stephon Diggs, he had a pretty solid game. They've got other guys that can come up big. That one drive, I'm forgetting the name, Gabriel something or other, wide receiver out of UCF. He had like three, great throws by Josh Allen, absolutely. But man, huge plays on the sideline, to keep the drive alive, toe dragging. It was absolutely unreal, demoralizing for that Colts defense, most definitely.
Yeah, and obviously, like you mentioned, Stephon Diggs is the number one guy. He was the first team All Pro, has statistically the best season this year by a receiver. I remember one play in that game, Josh Allen, it was like a 50-yard throw, and I wouldn't say it was overthrown. I thought it was a good throw, but it wasn't an easy catch by any means for Stephon Diggs. He just made it look so easy, and that was a massive play in that game. Gabriel Davis, like you mentioned there, he had about 2 or 3 of these key sideline catches. They're probably not going to show up on any highlight reels, but these are good 15, 20-yard passes that keep a drive going on some key third downs as well. These were not, just insignificant plays. These were big plays. I think Cole Beasley had a drive where he had about 2 or 3 catches on one of them. Well-balanced team. And, they want to run the ball as well with guys like Devin Singletary. I think they like to use Zach Moss as their receiving back. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This offense has a lot of weapons that might go under the radar a bit because of guys like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. But they're definitely not a team that's just relying on one guy.
Yeah, and a guy you mentioned there, Cole Beasley, is absolutely phenomenal out of the slot. I will say there's a little bit of a question mark for him this week because he was most definitely playing hurt last week. You could see him a lot of limping, a lot of playing through pain, but that's it. Obviously I don't wish for anybody to be injured, but that's the type of heart that me as a football fan loves to see. That guy, you could obviously tell he wasn't 100%. He was dealing with some pain, and he just went out there and made big play after big play, and definitely a rallying point for that offense. But yeah, no, we're both in agreement here. We're going to go with Bills at home. That puts us at 2 of the same picks so far out of 4 games. Let's see if that continues. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next game, which is Sunday at 3:05 kickoff. Browns at Chiefs in KC. I do believe this is the biggest margin that a team is favored by this weekend. KC favored by 10. Over there in Arrowhead, which is another stadium that could potentially be very cold weather. However, Cleveland Browns are, they know all about that, playing in the cold, being up there in that AFC North. But yeah, this is a game that is really interesting to me because what we've seen with this Browns team is, one, the offensive line is absolutely phenomenal. And how about your guy, Nick Chubb, man? Absolutely phenomenal for that Browns offense. And it just seems like the later the game goes on, the better and better that guy gets. a stat last week watching that Steelers game that he has, statistically the best third quarter running back in the league right now. So definitely for me, that's a game where the Browns want to pound the rock and they want to hold the ball and they don't want to let Patrick Mahomes and that absolutely electrifying KC offense just, run it down the field and, sling the ball all over the place.
Yeah, this definitely isn't, your grandma's Cleveland Browns team right here. This is a very good team right here. I'm glad you mentioned my guy, Nick Chubb, Jim Brown Jr., as I call him affectionately. My favorite UGA running back of all time, my second favorite player of all time. But, that has nothing to do with my opinion of him on the NFL. This guy's an absolute stud, like you mentioned. He gets better as the game goes on. I saw that stat as well, something like in the third or fourth quarter, he has the most rushing yards in the entire league. This is a guy that wants the ball. He gets stronger as the game goes on. Absolute stud. You can't discount what a guy like Kareem Hunt as well does for that 1-2 punch that they have at the running back position. And, I mentioned this last week, Garth. Pittsburgh coming in that game, I was pretty high in Pittsburgh all year, but they came in cold. And the Browns have come in hot. And we saw why. That first quarter, 28-0, that game, the Steelers tried to bat it back, but you go down 28-0 against a team like Cleveland in the playoffs, you're going to lose. And, their team is coming in this hot. Obviously, KC, they're the favorites, not just in this game, but in the NFL and to prove it otherwise. But, I think the 10-point spread, as John kind of alludes to there, I think that might be a little high. Do not underestimate this Browns team. Because if they can stay in it, if Nick Chubb keeps getting that ball and he gets stronger as the game goes on, if Baker keeps going on this good stretch of play that he's on right now, this offense has some weapons. That defense has some superstars like Myles Garrett and a guy like Denzel Ward. They're going to give the Chiefs a very good game. But, like I said, it is the Chiefs. It's really, really hard to pick against them. And, they're obviously the defending champs. Their offense, once it gets going, is just unstoppable. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life. The defense ain't great, like it says there, 16th in total defense, but, that might be because everyone's trying to pass the ball 50 times a game, trying to get back into it. I will pick the Chiefs, but I'm not going to pick a blowout like some people might, irrationally pick. I'm going to go the Chiefs by 6.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting though is the fact that, like we said there, the Chiefs offense is phenomenal, high flying. It's basically NBA on turf. But Browns offense, we've seen a few times where they can really put up some points in a hurry. As you said, just last week, 28 points in the first quarter against the Steelers. I remember that game a few weeks back where they played the Titans and they did something very similar where they got up, absolutely huge lead on the Titans. Titans tried to battle back late, but just too much of a deficit. So, the Browns offense definitely can score points in a hurry. I don't think it's anything that they want to rely on or count on doing, obviously, playing the Chiefs, but, they're definitely capable of it. I do think that a combination of Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb is going to keep them in this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, much like you said, but just Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead in the postseason. I can't, vote against them, Noah. I got to go Chiefs here in a close one. But I would not be shocked if the Browns, really late made this, a game that you don't want to miss in the fourth quarter. And by no means should people count them out because they're going to come to play, and the Chiefs are going to have their hands full, I feel like, with this Browns team.
Absolutely, man. The Chiefs are the favorites. Like I said, it's well-deserved, but don't underestimate a hot team in the playoffs. Baker Mayfield last week, 3 touchdowns, a 115 quarterback rating, no picks. This team is coming in after a massive win. Their biggest win probably since the original Cleveland Browns, I'd say. Their first playoff win in 3 decades at least. They're going to be very confident in themselves, and they're going to want to prove all the haters wrong. So all I'd say is Kansas City, yes, you are the favorites. It is deserved. But I would underestimate the Cleveland Browns at your own risk, which is something I never thought I'd say.
And thankful for Baker Mayfield and Cleveland Brown fans alike. Odell Beckham is still sitting at home on the couch. As we've mentioned time and time again, that offense, for whatever reason, and I'm personally not shocked. I feel like Bradley's personality clashes and, there's some internal issues there. But, the offense undoubtedly is better without him in there.
Yeah, they need to trade him, man. Like we said, that is kind of weird, but I think, like we've said a few times, it's because Baker makes better decisions when Odell's not there. I think he probably forces a bit too much to Odell, makes some mistakes, turns the ball over. He doesn't do that when he's not there. He spreads the ball out very much. So, yeah, I think they need to trade Odell.
Yeah, most definitely. And, we've talked a lot about that. There is a very big contract there. Somebody's going to have to pick it up. But, if you're the Browns, try and free up some cap, deal him, pick somebody else up, and continue that offensive momentum that you have without him on the field. With that said, Noah, let's go ahead and jump into the final game of this weekend. We got yet our third meeting of Bucks and Saints. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, potentially, pretty much a consensus out of the mainstream sports media is that this is Drew Brees' final season. We'll have to wait and see for certain, because you just never know with a guy like that. It seems like they're going to play forever. But unfortunately, it's very realistic that this could be not only the last game for both of these guys, but their last meeting as well. New Orleans is at home, but they're only favored by 3 points. I was actually kind of surprised by this, just with how the first two meetings of these teams did go. There's no doubt that the Saints got the better of them both meetings this season. I figured they'd be favored a little bit more at home. But, with that said, it's very tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. So I'm really interested to see how this one plays out. I just got a gut feeling that, maybe the Bucks don't win, but they got to play tougher here. No, they got to go down with some kind of fight. It can't be like those first two meetings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That second game they played was just abysmal, and that first game was close for a bit, and then the second half they let it slip away. This division rivalry, they don't want to get John says that they're starting Leonard Fournette. They don't want to lose 3 times to the Saints in one season, especially a guy like Tom Brady. He's confident in himself. He does have a high ego, which isn't a bad thing. You need that as a quarterback. But, he doesn't want to lose to Drew Brees again. That would not be a good look for him. And, like you said there, Drew Brees, he has the television contract with NBC, I believe it was, that he wants to go into after this season. He doesn't want to go out anything less than top. And, you got to really respect that. You're absolutely right. It's not easy to beat a team 3 times in the season. It doesn't happen a lot. The last time I remember it happening was a few years ago when the Saints did to the Panthers. When I look at this game, Garth, the Bucks, they are a good team. Don't get me wrong. But when I watched them in that game against the Redskins, I was really rooting for Taylor Heinicke in that game. He's an Atlanta boy. I thought he played fantastically. That said, I have a lot of concerns about the Bucks secondary looking at this game because, Taylor Heinicke played fantastic. I'm not taking away from him, but, this is a guy that a few months ago was, I think he was working at a hardware store, and they said something during the broadcast. His biggest connection to football was that his fantasy football quarterback was Russell Wilson or something like that. This isn't like they were playing some, Aaron Rodgers or something, and he had a fantastic game. He was piecing up that secondary, and that Washington team gave them everything they had, like I thought they would. If they play like that in the secondary against the Saints with the weapons they have, and, sure that in the first half the Saints started off slow, but in the second half they showed they were the more complete team, they're going to have a really tough time. And, I just don't see the Bucks, I don't think they're as complete a team as the Saints are. I think that game against the Redskins showed they have a lot of concerns in that defense. It's good, but it might be a little bit overrated. And, AK Alvin Kamara has been great this season. Michael Thomas, he finally scored last week. He's coming into his own. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, was a great signing for them. And Drew Brees is going to be as motivated as ever. So I am actually going to pick the Saints to win the third matchup to completely sweep the Bucks. And I'm probably going to go with my biggest margin. I'm going to go the Saints by 10 here.
Yeah, and for me, Noah, it's one thing that you touched on there was how they, really didn't look impressive by any means against, a Washington Redskins team that did fight very valiantly. But, for me and the Bucks, I don't expect the defense to show up. I'd be very shocked if the defense, at least for all 4 quarters, plays really well. For me, it's got to be Tom Brady in this offense. He's got to go out there. He's got to have a game. I got to see a lot from him. A lot from that offense. It's got to be clicking on all cylinders because I think if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the only chance you have at winning this game is just, having a 4-quarter great offensive performance, take care of the ball, have 300 passing yards, 100 rushing yards, something in that general area, and keep pace. I don't see the defense winning this game for the Bucs by any means. And the very opposite with the Saints, the defense for them very well could win the game because as we've all seen all season, the offense has been good, no doubt, but that defense has been great for them, a very huge part of their success. That defensive line can really get after the quarterback. The secondary has really gelled and really played well. They got a lot of guys there who have developed some chemistry and familiarity, and it's just a very solid unit. So yeah, like I said, no, the Bucs just got to play really well on offense and put up some points. They're not going to win this game by only scoring 21 as far as I'm concerned. You're going to have to put up something like 28, 35, maybe even 42 points if you're going to win this. Will they do it? I don't know. I definitely wouldn't bet on it. I don't even really know who I'm rooting for in this game because I love both quarterbacks. I'm not a fan, nor do I dislike both teams because, they're in the NFC. Chargers don't really have a rivalry with either one. Neither team has really done anything like knock the Chargers out of a playoff contention spot or, beat them in the Super Bowl or anything like that. So I don't really have, anything against either team, and I don't really love either team. I got to go Saints at home, and I just hope that the Bucs make it a really good game because these two quarterbacks, deserve to go out in, absolute classic fashion. I hope this game goes down as, a really great playoff game.
Yeah, obviously I do too. And, I think what you said there with the Bucs offense, the main thing I'm looking at is, we saw John mention there that Leonard Fournette is starting. I'm not a big fan of Leonard Fournette, so we'll see how that works out. But I think the main thing you have to look at is what is Mike Evans going to do against Marshawn Lattimore? This is a matchup to where, it's one thing if one guy has a slight advantage over the other. That's going to happen sometimes. It's not even close. Marshawn Lattimore completely owns Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is obviously a fantastic receiver. It's slipping my mind right now. I can't remember if he made the all-pro team or not, but if he did, I think he should have. He's a very good receiver, but Marshawn Lattimore owns him. He has his numbers. So what is Mike Evans going to do against Marshawn Lattimore? That's the key matchup, in my opinion, because if Mike Evans is getting shut down again, like he has the past few matchups, he's an emotional guy. I remember the first game they played, he committed a dumb penalty that Tom Brady laid into him for because he was getting frustrated. If that's happening, he's not producing, he's getting frustrated out there. This Bucs offense is going to have a really hard time. So I think the key matchup of the entire game, in my opinion, Mike Evans against Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Noah, because unfortunately that, is the truth. Marshawn Lattimore has absolutely dominated Mike Evans in his career. I pulled up the injury report here real quick just because I was curious. As far as the Bucs goes, it looks like they're having a few guys out on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the secondary. It could, obviously is going to help here. All right, I finally found a full list. Guard Alex Kappa, ankle injured reserve out. D lineman Jeremy Ledbetter did not participate in practice. He's been ruled out. Safety Andrew Adams, which I believe is like their fourth leading tackler I was reading earlier. He is questionable. That's definitely a guy they want to see play. Ronald Jones, as we all know, Leonard Fournette is starting this week. As you said, I'm not a very big fan of him either. My take on him is that's a really big dude who, had some question marks in college, but also ran really hard, really big downhill type running back. But when you watch him in the NFL, it seems like he's always running out of bounds and, avoiding contact. And, he definitely is not physically imposing by any means when I feel like he should be. But yeah, what I heard on Ronald Jones is that he's, game time decision, potentially should he play, he's definitely going to be on a pitch count. So, don't expect a huge contributing factor from him. But here we go when we get into the wide receivers, which I feel like is going to have to be huge for that Bucs team. Like you said, Mike Evans against Marshawn Lattimore. He is a little bit banged up. He's only been a limited participant due to that nagging knee injury that he's had. Another big one for me here is Chris Godwin. He did not practice today. Maybe they're just resting him, and he is going to play on Sunday, but should he not be able to play, that's not going to help at all because you need somebody else other than Mike Evans if he is getting shut down to, create some plays for that offense.
Yeah, that unfortunately it does not work against the Bucks at all. They need a guy like Chris Godwin to play because he is that great number 2 receiver to Mike Evans. And like you said, if Mike Evans is potentially having an off game, Chris Godwin needs to be able to carry the load. And I'm a big fan of Ronald Jones as well. The fact that he's limited participant and he's going to have a pitch count, I think, really hurts them. Because like you said with Leonard Fournette, he's a big guy, but in my opinion, he doesn't use his strength well. I think he just looks slow. He's not this guy that like Marshawn Lynch who's going to bowl people over. He just gets the ball and he kind of it seems like he's usually tackled pretty quickly. I don't have his numbers up right now, but I think his career yards per carry is something like 3.9 or 3.8. It's nothing special, really. He's a guy that I think has gotten a lot of his stats off of volume, and the Jaguars really relied on him. I don't think he's a great running back or anything like that. So Ronald Jones being injured is going to be a big blow to the Bucks, in my opinion. And we'll see what happens with the Chris Godwin thing, because what would guys like a Scotty Miller do if they're upgraded to that number 2 role? I'm a big fan of him, but if Mike Evans is struggling, can Scotty Miller be the guy to take the load off? I just don't know.
Yeah, and as you said there, Leonard Fournette, the numbers just aren't there. And like, I already said, I gotta agree completely with the fact that, it's a guy who seems to get taken to the ground really quickly, kind of, a little bit hesitant maybe. I don't know what it is exactly. But just definitely is not physically imposing, which a guy of his stature should most definitely be. I don't really get it, to be honest with you. But yeah, here's something that is a little bit off topic, but still related to the NFL. And I don't know if John commented it knowing I was a Gators fan or not. Maybe it just happened by chance. But I will say that I do have a lot of knowledge on this matter. As being a Gators fan, obviously I want to pay a lot of attention to, is my head coach staying or leaving? And John asking, does he go to the NFL? Do you think he could work with Herbert and the Chargers? I'm going to tell you one thing: he's definitely not going to the Chargers. They haven't even interviewed him or requested to interview him. It really seems everything that I've been seeing out of Chargers insiders that Brian Daboll, now that some of these other big name guys have been hired, is absolutely going to be the guy in LA. Just nothing's going to be made official until obviously the Bills season is over, as he is still coaching and trying to win a Super Bowl with that offense. But just in regards in general, Noah, to Dan Mullen and going to the NFL, a week or two ago, we did have a lot of rumors, potentially interviewing with the Jets and your Falcons. But it has come out that basically, maybe at one point there was a little bit traction to that story, but he did not actually end up interviewing with anybody. And whether it's true or not, the athletic director did come out and say, hey, look, we didn't even have anybody request to interview him for a head coach position. I do follow him on social media. He seems to be really excited about the recruits that are now starting to get on campus. At least this season coming, I don't see him going to the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to stay at Florida. I think, like we mentioned a few times in our several college football talks, I think he wants to take Florida to the next step. Obviously he won the SEC East this year. We'll see if he can do it again next year over Georgia. But, he wants to take them to the next step to the promised land. Can they beat a team like Alabama if they're standing in the way of a national title? Can he win a national title? That all remains to be seen. But yeah, I think he's going to stay. I think he still has stuff there that, like you said, he's excited about these recruits. He still has stuff he wants to prove at the college level. I think a guy like Urban Meyer, who was mentioned earlier, he's done everything he can do at the college level. His legacy is sealed. He wants to see what he can do in the NFL with the Jaguars. We'll see how that goes. But Dan Mullen, he still has stuff he's kind of chasing in college. So I definitely think that he will stay.
Yeah, I gotta agree completely. They're very, well put point there, Noah, with how Urban Meyer has been in college and pretty much done it all. Won championships at 2 programs, whereas Dan Mullen is still chasing that goal, and I feel like he definitely has a lot that, whether he does it or not, wants to accomplish at the college level before should he ever actually go over to the NFL. But one thing, before we get off here, Noah, that I did want to talk about a little bit, and not really because I'm excited for it or a huge fan of the guy, just, for the sake of it's a very hot topic right now. It's going to be very interesting and talked about for a lot of time, until we get into the season next season and we see really what can happen. And that is that Urban Meyer did go to Jacksonville Jaguars. He is the head coach. He's going to be getting paid somewhere right around that $12 million mark per year that he wanted, which, especially for a guy who hasn't proven anything at the NFL level, is a lot of money. And it seems like it's going to be very reminiscent to college, where he, pretty much said that, hey, I'll do it, but I got to have, as much control as possible over staff and roster moves and all that kind of stuff. What are kind of your thoughts, Noah, as far as what do you expect from him? What it would be a successful first season, and, is he going to live up to the hype? Is he going to be anywhere near the coach he was at the college level or not?
Well, obviously great questions right there, Garth. It's very, very tough to say. You have a guy like Nick Saban, who's, arguably the greatest college coach of all time, who goes to the NFL. It doesn't really work out. And then a guy like Pete Carroll, who's, I think a very good college coach, but obviously no Nick Saban. He goes to the NFL and he's absolutely fantastic, wins a Super Bowl. It's really tough to say. I think with Urban Meyer, he doesn't want that control, like you said. And the Jaguars, I think they're in a good situation. Well, they're not in a good situation, but they're probably going to get Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 pick. So he's going to have that right away, a potential franchise quarterback, like we were discussing in some group chat a few days ago. What's he going to do with the guy with Trevor Lawrence? Maybe Justin Fields, who knows? Maybe he's a bit of an Ohio State homer. He goes Justin Fields. I think he should go Lawrence, but you never know. I'm excited to see what he does, obviously, because, I'm not a fan of the guy personally. We've been over that, but as a coach, he's absolutely fantastic. To see what he can do moving to the NFL is going to be a really good storyline for me. I think a successful first season for a guy like Urban Meyer would be probably 6-10 record, a 7-9, something like that. They're not going to make the playoffs. The team is nowhere near good enough, and it showed this year. But if they can show some promise like a team like the Bengals did at times this year with Joe Burrow before he unfortunately got hurt, I think that would be a good first step for him. And do I think he can succeed in the NFL? It's really tough to say. I think he can, but obviously you can't predict it right now. I'm just really excited to see how it goes there.
Yeah, and I will say, Noah, that right now Jacksonville, I wouldn't say they're a very good team. There isn't a lot there, but there is a potential for a lot to be there. As you mentioned, first overall pick in the draft, most likely going to go Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, as Gardner Minshew mania has died down, and they're in dire need of that franchise guy under center to lead the way. And just outside of that, a lot of draft picks. They do have a lot of cap room to try and make some moves and, potentially trade away draft picks or even trade for more draft picks. We'll have to see, where they kind of go and what direction they're going to take in the draft as we do get closer. But the reason I say that right now they're not that good of a team, but have the potential to be, is the fact that, you don't have a franchise quarterback already. You don't have, a lot of premier weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And, it's not like this team, despite their record, had a really, really good offense or a really, really good defense. I think that their record was due to the fact that they just overall were not a very good team. So it's definitely going to take a lot to get them to where they want to be. And that division, man, Noah, is really, really tough. Whether Phillip Rivers remains in Indianapolis or not, I feel like the Colts are still going to be very competitive next year. The team is, just too complete not to be. We'll have to wait and see if they draft somebody in the first, which, their GM did come out and say that whether or not Phillip Rivers returns, quarterback is definitely one of their biggest needs. And it seems like they're most likely going to be taking somebody in the first round with their draft pick. Titans, they lose their offensive coordinator, but, they're going to retain the majority of that team. And until proven otherwise, I don't see why they won't be competing for the division yet again next year. Texans, dumpster fire. Sean Watson hopefully gets out of there. So I'm not going to say that they're going to be competitive. But yeah, just Titans and Colts, that's definitely a tough task to come in your first year, in the NFL with a team that needs a lot to be great and try and beat both of those teams and win the division. I think that probably an overachievement for him in his first season would definitely be just making playoffs. Hopefully he can sneak in there at a wild card spot, because obviously that's going to be their goal, is playoffs. But the AFC, should it be anything like this year, it's going to be very, very tough for them to even make it in there at that 7th spot. So, we'll have to wait and see what kind of moves they make, because they're going to have to make a lot of moves to get that team to where they want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you make a good point. Obviously they're not a good team. They went 1-15. They're 30th in points for, 31st in points against. But it's not like, they just got a bunch of janitors on the roster. I look at their roster a bit more in depth, and I do see, signs of potential. I look at a guy like James Robinson, a rookie running back. He's only 22 years old. He was a 1,000-yard rusher, 7 touchdowns for 4.5 yards a carry. He's a good player. I look at their receivers, Laviska Shenault Jr., 600 yards this season, 5 touchdowns. Keelan Cole, about the same, stat line. I'm a big fan of DJ Chark. I think he had a down year because he got hurt, but in 12 games started, he still had 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. Chris Conley, former Bulldog there as well. It there is some potential here. Like you said, the division is very tough. The Colts and Titans are obviously way ahead of everybody else. The Texans, if they somehow keep Deshaun Watson, which I agree with you, I want him out of there. I want a guy like him to actually be on a good team. But if he somehow does stay there, this is a guy that can carry his team to a victory at certain points in the season, even though the team isn't very good. I think that for the Jaguars, a good season for them would be, okay, let's see if we can finish a decent, respectable third, maybe go something like 6-10, just show some good improvement. Like you said, it's going to be very difficult to make the playoffs. I don't think they will, even with the 7th seed. Just show some improvement. That's all you can really hope for, because, you go 1-15. You can't expect too much. But, like we said, we'll see what Urban can do. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, most definitely. And I got to agree. No, definitely you just want to see some improvement. Finish third in that division. Like I said, unless the Colts Rivers doesn't return and they have absolutely abysmal quarterback play, I don't see them getting past them. And the Titans, like I said, they're going to be very good again. I don't think losing an offensive coordinator is going to make them, just be terrible next season by any means. But yeah, you mentioned some guys there. They definitely have some promising younger guys on that team, and they definitely have some older guys that, are great talents that just need to get back to playing to a level that they have played at in the past. I really like a guy there at middle linebacker, Miles Jack, just a guy who I've always, for whatever reason, rooted for. And I feel like he's a pretty solid linebacker in the league, especially a few seasons ago when they did make it up there to Foxborough to the AFC Championship game. That defense absolutely led the way for them. They had Blake Bortles at quarterback of, all guys. There's a name that we haven't heard mentioned in what seems like forever. But yeah, like I said, the team right now isn't good, but there's definitely the potential to be there. We're just going to have to see how Urban Meyer does in that, in Jacksonville with that roster, and what can he add to it in that first season. One comment I want to touch on real quickly here, Noah, before we do wrap up the show. John, and I personally didn't see this, but I will say I haven't been following sports very closely today with work and, getting here and getting prepared for the show quickly. But if, he did add Charlie Strong, that would be huge. Another guy who, isn't proven at the NFL level, but has always been phenomenal in the college football atmosphere, and a guy that I actually was hoping would return to Gainesville. So if that is true, I am a little bit bummed about that. But, definitely a great add. I think you're going to see a lot more college guys that he's coached at these various schools with join that staff. And we're just going to have to see how well, can these guys succeed at the NFL level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I did just actually look that up real quick, and it is true that he did get Charlie Strong on the staff. I'm not seeing specifics of, what it is. Obviously, it's a defensive position, I think. But, hopefully we get some more info on that. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, the Jags are in an interesting position. I just looked at their draft picks real quick. I think they have 2 first, a second, and, I think multiple third and fourth. So they have a lot of room to, build this roster and get some potentially, young, cheap players in there, and hopefully start to turn the team around. But, yeah, I mean, it's a great storyline. Obviously, we want to see what a guy like Urban Meyer can do in the NFL, because college coaches going into the NFL, like we said, is a mixed bag. I'm really excited to see which kind of guy he's going to be. Is he going to be a Nick Saban, or is he going to be a Pete Carroll? And it's going to be very interesting to watch. So.
Yeah, and obviously I don't think the expectations will be very high in the first season, but, come years 2, 3, 4 later down the road, they're definitely, obviously expecting to be competing for the division, or they'll feel like, he isn't really doing the job that he was brought in to do. But with that said, Noah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show here, as we are, just shy of that 2-hour mark, which easily makes this our longest show. It seems like we have not run out of stuff to talk about all night. I had a really good time. Glad we got some quality, hockey talk in there with the season kicking off. And obviously we're both really, really excited to have hockey back. We got Brian on for a good bit there, just short of an hour. That was really awesome, as we mentioned, when we wrapped up with him. And obviously, thank you guys for joining in. John, you were in here like all night, man. Tons of comments. We hadn't seen you in a couple of weeks, so it was really nice to see you again, man. Every Friday night, we love having you in here. Obviously, I love being joined by Noah, and really looking forward to next week already. And, we're going to see where we'll be at next Friday after another great weekend of playoff football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first week is fantastic. I expect this one to possibly be even better. And, like I said, easily our longest show so far, just under 2 hours. And the hockey talk with Brian, I did not think it would go that long, but it was just absolutely fantastic to get him in here, talk about a sport we haven't really talked about on here a lot, except for sometime during the playoffs. So that was really awesome. And then obviously the football talk, as usual, was really good. Like you said, it's just nice to have the consistent fans like John in here to, kind of talk with every now and then. And obviously it's good for us to talk about it as well because, as Brian said this earlier, the more we do it, we get better at it, we get more comfortable with it. And, we're only going to keep getting better, only going to keep building the following as well. So, we're going to keep grinding at it every Friday night at 9 p.m. or around. Sometimes we are a little late because of stuff that comes up. But, yeah, I mean, just was absolutely awesome as usual. And really looking forward to this weekend of playoffs because I don't see a bad matchup at all. It's going to be awesome.
Most definitely one of the best slates of, playoff football we could have asked for. With that said, and rightfully so, I know everybody is extremely fired up for NFL playoffs and the games coming up. I do want to quickly tell everybody that Supercross, for me, being a huge fan, I don't know if we have any Supercross fans in the chat still with us, but that does kick off the season tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern on NBC Sports Network. So it does kind of almost fit in there perfectly between the two games on tomorrow's slate. So if you guys have a chance, you don't really have anything going on, I do believe it's televised on NBC Sports Network, which there is a channel. It varies by, who your carrier is and all that. But, if you guys got nothing going on, go ahead and check that out. It's a friggin' phenomenal sport, really fun and exciting to watch, nonstop action, and, a very demanding physical sport, much like stuff like hockey and football. So you guys won't be let down. And, hopefully Ken Roxon can get a win, Noah, our guy, both of us we root for. But yeah, that's it from me. Unless you got anything else, no, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here.
I just want to say, I hope you remind me to watch that because my memory is terrible. I actually really want to watch that. I haven't really seen an event in detail too much, but like you said, our guy Ken Rocks, and I want to see him. So, just kind of hopefully you can text me, remind me about that so I don't forget. But yeah, I just want to obviously say thank you for watching, all the fans. Thank you to our guy Brian for not just coming on here but giving us this platform in the Sports Box as well. Big thank you to is Crowd Play sponsoring the show.
Yep, Crowd Play. We actually don't have them up on the banner here because we had a little bit of a different overlay this week because we did have Brian on. But yeah, as always, Crowd Play sponsoring the show. Go ahead and check them out on Apple App Store, Google Play Store. Use code THEBOX for 10% off, and it's just a good extra way to enjoy your games and potentially win prizes and even money while watching your favorite sports teams play.
Yeah, absolutely. And best show yet, man. Let's make the next one even better. And let's watch some great football. And I hope you and all our fans, have a great night. Get some beer in you, get some food in you, watch some great sports, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next Friday night. As always, 9 o'clock, give or take. Sometimes we have stuff come up. It's not always right at 9 o'clock on the dot, but we'll be on here again next Friday night. Hope to see all you guys in here, and I just hope everybody has a good weekend of sports and watching football and enjoying time.